Hello, everyone. Welcome to this introduction course to Ericsson Occupational Health and Safety Requirements for Suppliers. In this course, we will share Ericsson's safety requirements that we expect you to comply with. Safeguarding the health, safety, and well-being of our employees and anyone working on our behalf is a top priority at Ericsson. We believe all work-related injuries and illnesses are preventable. We care and want everyone to work safe and go home safe every day. In order to highlight some of the most important OHS requirements, I would like us to start looking at the zero-tolerance safety rules. These must always be followed as they define do's and don'ts for high-risk activities. There are 7 rules. While driving, do not use your phone and do not exceed speed limits. No alcohol or drugs while working or driving. Do not walk within a drop zone. Always wear a seatbelt, whether you are a driver or a passenger. Protect yourself from falling from heights. Always use correct personal protective equipment required for the task. Verify and confirm energy isolation before work. Let's take a short 15-minute break before we continue with other safety requirements.
Hi all. What are you talking about?
I was just mentioning our new team leader, Dan. I really like working with him. He always plans the work, identifies and mitigates the risks of the job before we start working. Actually, we had a conversation yesterday about safety that went over a lot of the same concerns that were just presented.
Really? I had a similar conversation with him as well.
So did I. What did you talk about?
Well, remember yesterday when we just arrived at the site? Dan approached me and asked if we can talk for a bit.
Hi, John. Do you have a minute? I want to have a short discussion about safety at work and why it's important.
Sure.
I want my team to work safe and go home safe at the end of every day. Since you are the driver, by planning your trip in advance, following the road traffic rules, including not speeding and, more importantly, driving safely, you can avoid accidents. Have you taken any safe driving training recently?
Yes, when I first started as a driver, I enrolled in defensive driving class. I repeat the course when needed, and of course, I have a valid driving license for vehicles I drive.
Okay. Regarding driving and road traffic accidents, it's very important that the vehicle you use is in good condition. Can you tell me a bit about how you check the vehicle before you drive?
Sure, I do that every day by following a daily checklist. In addition, I make sure that the vehicle has been serviced and maintained according to manufacturer specifications and that it's fitted with seatbelts and headrests in all seats.
Great. About seatbelts, does everyone use them all the time?
Yes, seatbelts are always worn, also by anyone who sits in the back. I don't start the engine before everyone fastens their seatbelt.
What about motorcycles or trailers? What measures do you take there?
When I drive a motorcycle, I always wear a helmet and check that the chin strap is fastened, no exception. I also check the condition of the motorcycle. Main thing about trailers is to check that they are correctly hitched with lights, that the brake cable is correctly attached, and the load is secured prior to driving away.
What would you do if you were to get an important phone call or an urgent text while driving?
I don't talk or text while driving. Distraction is the #1 cause of accidents. If it's urgent, I simply wait until I can make a stop and call back, or I use Bluetooth or other hands-free solutions so I can keep my eyes on the road and my hands on the steering wheel at all times.
Okay. I know we sometimes deal with tight deadlines or long drives, which can be tiring. How do you manage that?
It's not only about myself, I'm also responsible for the passenger safety. That's why I always make sure I am rested and have enough sleep. If I should have a long drive, I'll reach out to you as team lead to plan the journey safely, considering travel distance, road condition, and weather forecast, and including rest intervals. Actually, did you know that lack of sleep has similar effect as alcohol on driving?
I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it goes without saying, no alcohol, not even medication, which might affect driving.
That's all I wanted to talk with you about. I see that you're aware of the risks and have the knowledge and necessary training. It's good to see you follow the rules for you and your colleagues. Thank you.
My pleasure. Talk to you later. It was great to have this conversation and see that he makes sure we are qualified to do our job and cares about our safety.
Yes, I saw you and was wondering what you were talking about. Later in the day, we also had a similar conversation.
Hi, Will. Do you have a few minutes to talk?
Hello. Sure.
Working on electrical equipment is very risky. As you know, electrical incidents may cause serious injuries or even death. So, what can we do to prevent such incidents?
First, the work should be thoroughly planned by doing a risk assessment.
What needs to be considered in the risk assessment?
We should identify any hazards of the system or equipment which we'll be working on and take precautions considering that the nature of the work might change at any time.
Okay. Anything else?
The competence of the people doing the work and the necessary level of supervision are important too.
How do we know that the people doing the electrical work have the right competence level?
Well, take me for example. I'm competent since I'm trained to an appropriate level. I have experience in doing similar work. I hold a valid certificate and also go through regular reassessment to ensure my knowledge is up to date.
All right. How about your equipment? Do you have the right equipment for your work, and are they in good condition?
Yes, I have. And I always check that the equipment is in good condition. I have the appropriate PPE, such as arc and shock-rated gloves and face shield. I use tools that have been inspected, and in case one of them is damaged, I make sure it's taken out of service.
That's great to hear. What are you working on right now?
I was actually about to start on some electrical equipment by adding my lockout device to the de-energized system and verifying zero energy, while of course wearing the correct PPE until zero energy is verified. I follow these steps every time because it helps ensure I'm safe and return home to my family each day.
Great work, and thank you for this conversation. See you later, Will.
All right. Talk to you soon. I felt the same. It was very nice to see him so interested in our safety. He seems to really care.
I agree. I had the same feeling after my conversation with him too. I climbed down and was taking off my gear when he showed up.
Hello, Ali. Can we have a short conversation?
Sure.
Your job is one of the most high-risk activities on the field. I want to make sure you are working safely. I've already reviewed the site safety plan that includes specific risk assessments and control. It's my understanding that without the presence of a second climber, no climber is permitted to work at heights.
Yes. And I'm a trained and certified climber. There is always a second climber with me who is certified on tower rescue.
Okay. How critical is the personal protective equipment, PPE, in your work? Do you have everything needed to work safely?
Yes. I always use the full set of approved climbing equipment that is in good condition. As you can see, I have a full body harness, boots, gloves, helmet, lanyard, ropes, and connectors.
Great. And has your equipment been inspected recently?
I check all equipment for tear and damage before I use it. Actually, in addition to the pre-use inspection, fall arrest equipment must be inspected at least every 6 months, whether it's used or not. If we find any faulty harnesses or lanyards, we remove them from service.
Great. Do you work on mobile elevated work platforms as well? What safety precaution do you need to take with that work?
I do. I've been trained and authorized to operate them. I'm always restrained and never climb on handrails or edges, as it can be dangerous. I'm always secured with fall protection while in the basket.
While working at heights, people on the ground can be also at risk. How do we keep people on the ground safe?
Well, first, a drop zone must be identified and marked with suitable barriers and by adequate signs. A drop zone is basically an area at the base of the structure where items could fall and potentially cause injury or damage. Secondly, all tools should be secured to keep them from accidentally being dropped.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest unsafe behavior when working at heights?
Free climbing. It's essential to always be anchored. Not doing it means putting your life at risk. You may never be able to see your family again. So, to stay alive and go home safe each day, you have to always tie off. 100% tie off, 100% of the time is my motto. Who would take a chance on not seeing their family again by just not following that simple rule? Once you understand the importance, you will follow it every time.
Thank you, Ali. That's all I wanted to know. See you later.
Okay, goodbye. Just like you both said, I think this was a great conversation to have. I also felt the same, and that he made me feel valued.
I agree.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Dan.
I know you must be all wondering why I was asking those questions. Let me explain. Whenever I start in a new team, I make it a priority to go over the safety rules with each team member. Why is that a priority? Years ago, I was involved in a serious work accident, and I must tell you that without the support of my colleagues, I would not be here today. Not only that, but as you know, I am the person in charge of work for this site, which means I must check compliance with Ericsson's OHS requirements by performing site risk assessment to secure overall safety on site, verifying that all employees are trained and competent for their tasks, checking appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, is provided and worn correctly, reviewing and verifying tools and equipment are in good condition, maintaining the OHS site documentation is available and complete, and performing remote site assurance where applicable. As you can imagine, this stuff does take time, but I hope you also understand how important it is to follow these guidelines. I also want to thank you for helping and adopting the safe behaviors we have discussed. It takes all of us to be personally committed to safety if we are truly going to prevent injuries. If there is ever any concern you have, please speak up. Our goal is for all of us to get home safely every day.
Thank you. Looks like our break is almost over. Shall we return to the class?
Let's go.
Welcome back. Now we will walk through other health and safety risks. These are lone working. Lone working means working isolated at a distant site, in a remote part of the building, or alone in a workplace. To stay safe while working alone, someone else has to be aware at all times of your location, contact details, arrival and departure times, and travel or vehicle details. You are not to work alone on live power installations, at heights, in confined spaces, or in areas with no phone coverage. Manual handling. This includes lifting, lowering, pushing, pulling, carrying, or holding goods. To prevent injuries, make sure you take the manual handling training before work. Use appropriate PPE and use mechanical handling when possible. If there is a heavy load, ask one or more colleagues to help. Chemical handling. To work safely, a risk assessment is needed before the first use. You need to be trained about the use of appropriate PPE. Chemicals should be listed, monitored, kept in marked sealed containers, and stored in accordance with legislation and the safety data sheet. Construction and civil works. A risk assessment and safety plan must be in place, and everyone must take the relevant OHS training before work commences. Environmental and occupational noise. A risk assessment on noise exposure, control measures where noise limits are exceeded, training, and appropriate PPE such as noise control or hearing protection equipment should be in place to prevent illness. Exposure to radio frequency and electromagnetic fields. The limits in applicable national regulations on occupational exposure to RF-EMF shall be applied. Ericsson employees and suppliers who work in environments where the RF-EMF exposure may exceed applicable public exposure limits shall be familiar with the applicable safety requirements, including relevant network provider information, and should have received relevant RF-EMF safety training. Warning signs shall be respected and instructions on site shall be followed. If the RF-EMF exposure is exceeding the exposure limits in the workplace, relevant equipment shall be switched off or the power shall be reduced, as deemed necessary. Antenna feeders, waveguides, or connectors associated with a transmitter in operation shall not be disconnected unless it is known that the RF-EMF exposure will not exceed the exposure limits. Only trained persons shall carry out RF-EMF exposure measurements, which shall be conducted according to applicable standards. Fire prevention. In case of an emergency, everyone must be trained on emergency plans and evacuation measures, including fire prevention. A fire extinguisher and a first aid kit should always be made available on site during work. One of the team members should be a certified first aider. Thank you, everyone, for participating in today's discussion. I hope you have all found it valuable and necessary. Remember, working safely and adapting safe behaviors is the responsibility of each and every one of us. Your personal commitment to safety and assisting your colleagues to be safe will contribute to creating a positive safety culture. Everyone should work safely and return home safely at the end of the day. Speak up if you see something unsafe or if you see a colleague in danger. Wouldn't you want them to speak up for you? And always remember, if any incident occurs, report it as soon as it happens so we can prevent it from happening again. Have a great rest of your day.